Well, there are new allegations against former Louisville coach Rick Pitino in the ongoing college basketball corruption and bribery scandal. A federal indictment released Wednesday suggests that Pitino was fully aware of a scheme to pay Cardinals recruit Brian Bowen and even participated in the plan. A handful of assistant coaches and an Adidas executive were named in the indictment. Pitino previously told ESPN that he had no involvement in the scheme. He was placed on unpaid leave shortly after the scandal broke, and he's since been fired. Here with me now, Gary Parrish, who's with CBS Sports College Basketball. He's an insider, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Fascinating case here. Where do you think this fallout is going in this investigation?
Really anywhere. I mean, that's the big question, and there's no obvious answer because this is a sport that has long had rumors connected to it. You know, nobody's ever pretended, at least not privately, that this is a clean sport at the recruiting level. And so I'm not saying everybody is nervous about it, but I can tell you a whole bunch of men who aren't publicly connected to this case so far, yeah, they're not sleeping so well at night because if you recruit at the highest level of this sport, maybe you've got nothing to worry about, but a lot of guys might.
So Pitino lost his job.
Sure.
He hasn't been indicted. Do you think that's still a possibility for him?
To go back to Louisville?
To be indicted.
Oh, sure, because if he is connected to this in the way that the federal documents allege, and they get one of the Adidas executives to confirm what Christian Dawkins is caught on the wiretap saying, which is Coach Pitino knew, now you've got a more credible witness. Christian Dawkins is a sketchy character, wannabe agent. He's referred to as an agent often. He wasn't technically an agent. He was sort of a runner just trying to connect people. I think that the U.S. Attorney's Office is probably aware that he would be a tough person to rely on solely. But if you can turn an Adidas executive and confirm what Christian Dawkins has said, an Adidas executive to say, yes, I had a conversation with Rick Pitino, he was aware of what we were doing, then Rick might have some problems.
Whether Pitino's indicted or not, do you think he has a chance to bounce back, or is it over for him?
I think it's probably over for him, and here's why. I'm not going to pretend that cheating can't be overcome. There's a whole bunch of guys who have been caught cheating who are, went back, got coaching jobs, and are working today making millions of dollars. But what we found out is Tom Jurich, who was the athletic director at Louisville, 3 years ago was considered one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, athletic directors in the country. He was tremendous in every way you typically measure athletic directors. He didn't have a job right now. And the reason he doesn't have a job right now is one reason. He stood by Rick Pitino. So if you're any other athletic director in the country, why would you bring that on campus? Because you're not only bringing a guy on campus who could theoretically give you a great basketball program, you're bringing somebody on campus who, if he walks outside the lines again, or anybody who works for him goes outside the lines again, you pay with your job. I wouldn't want to risk that if I were an athletic director.
Yeah, and it's not just Louisville. It's other. What are you hearing about the other schools?
Well, listen, there are 4 schools that have former assistant coaches who are facing federal crimes and thus the possibility of federal prison right now. These aren't hardened criminals. They don't live by a code. These are college-educated men with families and children. They never envisioned going to prison. Even as they were allegedly committing these violations, when you live in the college basketball world, you don't think federal prison. You think, okay, I might get fired. I might put my school on probation. You don't think I won't see my kids for 6 months or 6 years. So I think most people assume those guys are going to talk.
Yeah.
And if you are a USC assistant, what are you going to say about your boss? If you're an Arizona assistant, what are you going to say about your boss? People are nervous right now. Bruce Pearl is reportedly not cooperating with Auburn's internal investigation after his associate head coach Chuck Person is facing federal crimes. Why is that? I don't think Bruce is concerned so much about Auburn right now. He's concerned probably about what Chuck Person might have to say to federal investigators.
But Gary, this pay-to-play scheme is nothing new in sports. How do you think this is going to impact recruiting?
Well, I had one coach joke that the class of 2018, poor kids, they're going to be the most inexpensive recruits in his. They lost like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars here. I think everybody's scared right now because nobody knows where this is going. Even phone calls between people who used to be very comfortable with each other, those phone calls are now uncomfortable because am I talking to somebody who's got a wiretap? Am I talking to somebody who is working with the feds? Nobody trusts anybody right now. And so everybody's scared straight at this moment. If you hear about a big-time recruit come into a school right now, you can, for the first time in a long time, reasonably assume it might be on the up and up. But ultimately, as long as this sport is tied to amateurism and these young people are worth we now know. You can't argue. At least $100,000 in the case of Brian Bowen.
Yeah.
You've got a black market that's always going to exist. Guys will be smarter. They'll be more careful. But unless the NCAA really shakes it up and says we're going to do something about strict amateurism, the cheating is always going to be around.
Do you see that happening? Do you see the NCAA?
No, because amateurism is the model that allows them to keep all the money. You know, the men in power are wealthy because of amateurism. The schools are making tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars because of amateurism. And so that'll be the last thing they give up. They will give it up someday, just like the Olympics gave it up 30 years ago.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be tomorrow.
What are you watching in the coming months? And you were telling me earlier that this is going to take a while. This is not going to be done by Christmas.
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, because right now they've got 10 men, facing federal prison. The U.S. Attorney's Office has made it very clear they're not just trying to get these 10 guys.
Yeah.
They want to see where it takes them. Where else can we go? And so my understanding is they're trying to see if those 10 men want to cooperate. And when those 10 men talk, particularly guys who worked at Adidas, they've probably got stories to tell, and it could touch, I think, literally any program in America.
CBS Sports College basketball insider Gary Parrish. Thank you for joining us, Gary.
Thanks for having me.